And straight to our colleagues standing by, SABC News anchor Nompumelelo Siziba is in Cape Town and our Economics Editor Tshepo Mongoai in Braamfontein for us. Now let's cross to Nompumelelo Siziba and first up for more on Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's medium-term budget policy statement set to be delivered in Parliament this afternoon. Nompu, lots to be anticipated. This is the first time that we'll hear a budget since the formation of the GNU.
That's correct, Sakina. Thank you very much. Indeed, welcome to windy Cape Town, which is likely to get a bit warmer as the day progresses. But indeed, much to anticipate from this midterm budget, especially given the fact that there is a new GNU that's been in existence for just over 100 days. It's not the usual situation where the ANC's, brains trust were the only people that were contributing to the midterm policy strategy. You've got other voices in there, and of course we know that the ANC and the DA are quite fundamentally opposed on certain policies. But I think what's been positive about the GNU is that they have been able to coalesce around the idea of boosting economic growth and also boosting job creation. So this has been very positive indeed, and no doubt that will help to inform what we hear in the midterm budget. Analysts anticipate that we might hear that debt has come down slightly, which will be very positive, which will then impact the budget deficit. It may narrow the budget deficit because government or National Treasury has not been going to the market as often to borrow money. And part of the reason for that is because, of course, that GFECRA, the gold and foreign exchange contingency reserve account that the Reserve Bank holds, that the government tapped onto. It tapped onto about 100 billion rand to assist it to pay down some of the debt that it accrued in the 2023-2024 financial year. And this then enabled them not to have to go to the market and borrow so much. What happens in terms of economic growth? Well, it's unclear whether the government will be able to revise that outlook upwards or downwards. We know that we've had steady flow of electricity, which has been positive for the economy, but other headwinds as well, like, for example, the logistics situation at Transnet, which is ever so slowly being resolved. So, of course, that's just one angle. The midterm budget will have to show that it's fiscally prudent for ratings agencies, but at the same time, it's also going to have to ensure that it continues to honor its commitment to the social wage, ensuring that, services like police, social services, education are fully covered. There have been concerns that with the wage discussions that have been going on, and the wage increases that they had to adhere to last year, this has meant that they're going to have to cut services in terms of teachers and so on, which is very negative, and also healthcare. So there's a concern there, and social formations are hoping that the government is going to be able to provide more resources towards things like teaching, because of course it's quite ridiculous that you're going to have less teachers when we have such a massive problem in our education system. So these are some of the issues that are going to be coming out. And of course, we are here stationed in Cape Town, not the most glorious position that we're in. We're opposite Parliament, the original Parliament. We're not at the City Hall as we have been in previous years following the fire at Parliament. So we're a little bit closer, and that might be a good sign that we get back into Parliament in the next couple of years. In the meantime, let me cross to Economics Editor Tshepo Mongoai.
Right, yes, absolutely. The buzzword is going to be debt consolidation. And we know that for quite some time, government has been making an appeal to various government departments that they need to rein in spending. And of course, we have not seen much. So we expect that that is probably going to continue to ensure that our fiscal is retained on a viable path so that there is enough resources for some of the basic services. Remember, for every 1 rand, 20 cents is going into servicing debt, not to pay the debt, but merely just to service the debt. So there are quite a number of risks, as Nompu indicated, that the government has indicated. Lower economic growth remain one of the major risks that is facing our fiscal. And of course, higher than budgeted wage demands is also another risk that needs to be addressed in the current fiscal framework. And of course, we also know that the GNU will come with its own challenges in terms of reining in spending. But of course, what's also important is to ensure that the future generation are actually spared from some of the tough decisions that had to be made. Remember that if we are spending more on debt, it is the future generation that will have to pay some of these debts. I mean, some of our current government debt can actually go up to 30 years. So it tells you that it will be the future generation that will have to bear the brunt. We pay about R1 billion a day into debt. 5 trillion rand, that's our total debt stock. We expect that in the medium-term budget policy statement this afternoon, the Minister of Finance will indicate where we are in terms of debt to GDP. We were told in February that it could stabilize at around 74%. But just a perspective, we invited some young people who just to share their thoughts and perhaps some of the solutions that they may have to the minister. Thank you very much. Just tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Phineas Tusago, an economics student at Wits University.
Your take in terms of government is managing its fiscal framework. We know that debt is increasing sharply. What do you think government needs to do in order to ensure that they bring down the debt and make sure that there's enough money for some of the basic services?
So if we remember earlier this year, the Government of National Unity outlined 3 key strategic areas that they wanted to deal with, one of them being job creation and most importantly economic growth. So because of this, I think that the Finance Minister will sort of try to align his budget towards helping the government achieve those goals, and this would then obviously mean that sort of tightening his fiscal budget, to reduce the debt levels as you've outlined. So I think that is what is most important. But also over above and that, because of the positive outlook we've had as a country over the past few months, because of our political stability, I think that we should also be expecting some sort of key areas that will sort of try to reassure the financial markets that we are indeed heading into the correct direction, and by doing so we can then attract more investment and deal with the job creation and economic growth that they're trying to achieve.
All right. Debt consolidation is not quite popular. We know that some people are quite critical. They expect that government should actually put more money into the system, and that will drive economic growth. Just tell us who you are first before you enter the conversation.
I'm Griffin Radebe. I'm an economics and politics student at Wits. I think what I expect the Minister of Finance to say in his speech is obviously reducing the debt to GDP ratio by servicing debt and making sure that our interest payments are as low as possible. And obviously, as a member of the youth, I expect him to speak about the Youth Employment Service or the expansion of such initiatives so as to address the youth unemployment that we currently have. I'm interested to see how the finance minister will reduce the budget deficit or maintain fiscal discipline while also addressing the number of social needs that our country currently faces.
We know that there's a lot of pressure for government to spend on social wage. Almost 60% of expenditure is going to social wage, social grants and things like that. We know that's also not sustainable. What do you think could be a solution to ensure that we reduce that? But there's also a political risk. If people are not getting some kind of assistance, it may come up with its own implications.
There's obviously a multifaceted approach, but one of the solutions is to address the unemployment that we face currently, even if it's through short-term initiatives, just to ensure that people have the funds to spend and that the money goes into the economy, which will stimulate economic growth, and the government can use that surplus to maybe reduce the debt, and that will further put us in a situation where we can reduce the debt to GDP ratio, which might stimulate more economic growth.
And one of the important issues to outline is the payment of services. Municipalities currently have a huge challenge in ensuring that people do pay for their services. And we know that that has implications on some of the bulk services like your rent, water, as well as Eskom that provide bulk services to municipalities. And we know for quite some time government has really been trying to ensure that indeed people start paying their electricity so that Eskom is more sustainable, as well as some of the likes of the rent, water. So I just want to get you, another student is joining us now. What is it that you think government needs to do to ensure that households pay their services? Because it's the young generation that's going to inherit this in the past 30 years, 40 years, who would have to deal with the non-payment of services. And obviously, if there's no payment of services, there won't be Eskom, there won't be rent, water. There's going to be a whole lot of challenges in the economy.
Good morning, Tshepo. Good morning to the rest of South Africa. I am Patricia Mcharini, and I think that government, first and foremost, needs to create a system that's sustainable and that's consistent and reliable, such that it holds people accountable. I think in South Africa we have a problem where people are not necessarily held accountable, and we can see this moving from the top of moving back down, from the likes of the crisis we had with corruption and many people not being held accountable. So we need to create a system in South Africa where households can, the household debt that households owe municipality, Eskom and so forth, can be monitored and can be tracked. And when it reaches a certain threshold, then the government needs to start actively engaging with law enforcement and other institutions to make sure that citizens are being held accountable. That's one measure that I think would be beneficial and quite an easy solution to put in place to make sure that households and ordinary citizens are being held accountable should they not pay their electricity bills, water bills, and so forth.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that's another issue of payment of services. That is a risk to our fiscal framework. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot to discuss from now on until 2 o'clock with my colleague Nompu, and we'll be giving you analyst and economist as we delve deep into the medium-term budget policy statement. It's back to you in studio.
Well, thank you so much, Tshepo Mongoai in sunny Braamfontein and Nompumelelo Siziba in windy Cape Town, and much more discussion to come here on Morning Live.